It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster.
Hello all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Okay, I'm glad everybody's doing alright. Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, I'm cold. It's been cold here. I know that sounds weak compared to what some other people are getting, but being cold, you get to cuddle up and get to read some. So I went and picked my stuff up, and I call it They Rebooted My Childhood. I got the Snagglepuss #1, The Tick, and Rocko's Modern Life. So it's kind of what I call my fluff week. It was kind of neat seeing where some of these characters have gone, especially the Snagglepuss one. I'd have to say that was the more modern out of all of them that I did read. It was pretty good. I also got a chance to read the Labyrinth one that's been out for a while. I didn't realize it was a one-shot until I saw it, so I picked that up. And like I said, it's just all the ones you remember from your childhood. So I've had a pretty good week.
Nice.
Nice.
Cool.
That's very good haul.
Yep. Oh, and also, Les handed me the Image Plus. I don't know if a lot of our listeners read that or anything else, but there's some really good comic books, and they give you the excerpts from them and a couple of pages of it and a little bit about your artist and stuff. So if you see those, pick them up, because, like I said, I discovered quite a few that I'm wanting to put on my list, so that was a pretty interesting read, too.
I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yep.
It's a nice way to find unusual items out there.
It is. And plus, they kind of tell you about who's writing it, too, so you get it in a different perspective, you know, than maybe what you have read it in, you know. But in this one, it had, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Marjorie Liu. She does Monstrous.
Yes. Yeah.
So they've got interesting interview with her and a couple of pages from it, too. So like I said, if you see them, pick them up. Some of the local shops will give them to you if you're on a pull list. But if not, I think they're like $2. So.
Oh, nice.
Not bad.
Pretty good for a sampler.
It is. And it kind of lets you know if did the story grab you enough to buy the whole comic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So. But yep, that was my week.
Cool. Well, for me, I had pulled out a couple trades from the past, just kind of go down memory lane. I had forgotten I had these. Dynamite had done a couple of collections of the old Marvel Battlestar Galactica. And I really wish they would go back and do Omnibus, which would not take a whole heck of a lot to do because it only lasted 23 issues. But the first volume was issues 1 through 5, and then like 14 and 15. And then the second volume was like 6 through 13. And the reason why they did that was because of 6 through 13 was a special story arc that, you know, they couldn't really just do 2 chapters and then cut off for the next volume. But I had forgotten that series was my introduction to Walt Simonson's art, because he did a lot of it, certainly the last half of the run, if not more. And it was kind of cool going back, and of course I'm a big fan of the show, of the old show. And it was kind of nice going back and reading those stories once again, and they hold up pretty well. I mean, they went a different route from the show, which they had to, because it was basically they were contractually obligated not to follow the show any more than what they had done, which was essentially the first 5 episodes, which was essentially the movie, which was turned into 3 episodes and then a 2-parter. And then after that, they were basically allowed to do whatever they wanted to, which in hindsight was kind of interesting because I don't want to get into it too much, but in the original show, the 4th and 5th episode, like I said, was a 2-parter. It was where the fleet entered a void, and by the end of the 5th episode, they got out of the void. In the book, it didn't happen until issue 13. So they spent literally 7 months in the void, and the story arc that I was talking about from 6 to 13 kind of helped them kind of chronicle how they were able to get out of there and what help they had and all that. So it was kind of interesting. And there was a little bit more of a horror. I don't want to say. Well, I guess you could say horror because you're dealing with like a space vampire and one issue and then some other stuff. There was a little bit more of horror aspects to it than just pure space fantasy. So it was kind of a different take. So it was fun to read again.
Interesting.
It is.
I'm glad you could find something like that.
Yeah, like I said, I really wish that Dynamite would do the omnibus because it was only 23 issues. It wouldn't be too much to do it, and I would think it would be reasonably priced. Marvel's not interested in doing it, and Dynamite has the rights right now because they're doing the new miniseries that's having the old and the new kind of face off, which I finally had a chance to read that first issue, and yeah, Mike, that was kind of interesting. I want to see where they go with that.
It was a little different, I thought.
Yeah,
In a good way.
yeah, in a very good way. How about you, Les?
Well, I went to the stack and started looking at 1s and 2s, but I read the Dejah Thoris 0, which is a good starting place. It's mainly the story of the character, how she came to be princess, and what her first face-off was with characters. I also picked up Monstro Mechanica #2, which is one that I hope everyone is reading because that is really good stuff. I picked up the Mighty Crusaders, which is an interesting storyline, trying to gear up the Crusaders once again as a new team. Yet they've got infighting in this, which is not unique to comics, but it's kind of cool. I picked up Not Brand Echh from Marvel. I'm sorry, I was really disappointed with this. To me, it did not have the comedy value that the old series did. And to me, that was one of the reasons to even read the book.
Well, that's a bummer.
That is.
I got my copy of Codename Knockout and started rereading that. This was a series in the late 90s, early 2000s by Robert Rhodey and Lewis Small doing the writing and the art. And it is about an agent, female agent, whose father is the head of the group Evil and whose mother is the head of the group Good. And Dad tries to convince her to come work for him. Mom wants her under Mom's thumb. So it's an amusing little story. Language is a bit brusque, and there is nudity in it. And this was a DC title under the Vertigo tag, but I don't remember DC doing all that many books with nudity in it. And then as a palate cleanser, I sat down and started reading or watching my DVD of Scared Silly, 13 classic horror comedies. And some of them are they're ridiculous. But they've got some classics here, too. They do have Little Shop of Horrors, A Bucket of Blood, and Thomas's favorite, Manos, The Hands of Fate.
And those were the good ones.
Those are the great ones, really.
All right, I've seen Bucket of Blood. I don't know. I'm not sure great is a word I would have used to describe that. Little Shop of Horrors is great. I'll give you that.
Me too.
Bucket of Blood, I'm not so sure.
But to have those great character actors step forward and try to act is amazing.
Yeah. Step forward and try to act. Step forward and try to act with no script whatsoever, yeah.
But Manos' Hand of Fate is spectacular.
Oh, sure, spot on.
It is so warped. Where's it going?
Not even the writer knew where it was going.
I have to agree with that. He's totally unaware of what's going on around him.
Cool.
Aye.
Mikey?
Okay. I got nothing this week, so I'm going to do something a little different. Because I, at least, I'm not going to make any claims for anybody else. I have an oversight to correct. Because there was a book that came out last week that we should have mentioned, and somehow none of us managed to mention it. But for those of you who are not aware, hurry back to your comic shop and make sure you pick up the new issue #1 of the new Strangers in Paradise series by Terry Moore, because everybody should pick that up. And I'm a little surprised we all forgot to mention it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We're doing it now. We got it covered.
Surprised I overlooked it too.
That was a great oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, go get it.
Yep,
If your
you'll get it.
If your store doesn't have it, have them order it and make sure they get it from now on.
True.
Add it to your pull list.
Because we're not biased towards Terry Moore or anything.
Nope.
Nope.
Alrighty. Before we get into this week's topic, want to take a couple of moments to thank our sponsors. We like to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for being a sponsor of the Fellowship. Right now, they are running a 30% off 2017 items. These are weekly deals, so you'll need to go back and you'll need to check on a weekly basis. Although this will be ending the 29th, but there would be 30% off, say, graphic novels or toys and action figures or collectibles or just comics. These are all items that came out last calendar year. So if you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, click on our sponsors tab, you'll see down at the bottom some more information regarding Ring in the New Year sale, I believe is what it's called. And in addition to that, they're running their evergreen deals, which is 30% off pre-order manga titles, 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics. So while you're on our sponsors tab looking at more information for these deals, you'll see links there. Click on those. And I'll take you to their website and let them know that we sent you their way, and knock yourself out. Take advantage of some of these deals. Our topic for today. It had come to my attention that 55 years ago this month, January, a certain cartoon creator, or comic creator, well, cartoon, yeah, made his first contribution to a well-known magazine. And the magazine is called Mad, and the particular cartoonist we are talking about is Sergio Aragones. And his first piece was called A Mad Look at the U.S. Space Effort. And, of course, he took off from there. I remember growing up reading Mad Magazine. It was funny as a kid reading. You had Mad. You also had Cracked Magazine. You also had Crazy Magazine. They were all kind of the same. Obviously, Mad had been around a lot longer. Mad's been around since early to mid 50s, but they were kind of similar. But the thing that kind of stood out to me was what I later found out was Sergio's work of doing little drawings on the margins. That's where I first knew of his work, and of course that led to me to read Crew and go on from there. But I figured with this being his 55th anniversary of basically his first American work, that we'd take a few minutes to kind of talk about his contributions, not only to Mad Magazine, but obviously his own work, and just take a few minutes to say thanks for the great entertainment. So, who would like to go first?
I'll step forward.
Alrighty.
Since I have been reading Mad Magazine longer than most, I was in, I want to say around 6th grade when I first found Mad Magazine, and read it quite often. When Sergio began the marginal comics, I was enthralled. I said, this is such a great idea, because it was the equivalent of a single panel comic strip in every one, for each one that he did. There was no have to turn to another page to see what else was going on. He had it self-contained. This to me was quite the novel idea for a magazine of that sort, although Mad also did single panel cartoons. This one stood out, obviously, because it was where you would not expect something of this nature. But he went forward with parodies or cartoons of people, various people, things happening to them, and it could be a monkey, it could be a superhero, it could be a politician. It was just open for anything and everything, just like Mad was at that time. And personally, I don't recall any that I found unfunny. I got a chuckle or a smirk at least out of everything that he did. And there were a couple that it was a knee slap. And it was, here, take a look at this, to show someone else. And a lot of times they would go, I don't get it. But I think he's been brilliant in all of his endeavors, and we'll get to discussing his later work here shortly. But the opening pages for me was the marginal comics that he did.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you this, Les. Did you read any of the Mads when they were actually in comic form? Because the first 24 issues were actually in comic form, and then it went to a magazine format.
No, I picked it up when it was a magazine.
Okay.
And at that time, I think it was like issue number 30.
Okay.
So it was a full-size magazine at that time.
And I agree with you. I can recall, because I didn't get it every month, but I usually got it a lot, especially if there was a movie parody or a TV show parody that kind of caught my attention. And I can think of a lot of this. There was a lot of this stuff that I just didn't really even smile, much less laugh at. But I can't think of one of Sergio's where I didn't at least kind of chuckle. Yeah, there was always something cute, and it was just. It was not really any kind of it wasn't really a complex. I was about to say complex, but I guess that would work. It was something just simple. You can pick it up pretty quick. What's going on and laugh and there wasn't a lot of times there just wasn't something really. There wasn't really something really think about. Okay, what's going on here? You kind of get it pretty quick, and you either laugh or you don't, but more times than not, you did laugh.
Kind of a lighter little snippet in between some of the heavier pieces in Mad.
True.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit, I didn't really expose myself. I didn't... Mad,
Dig your hole this time.
Yeah, big time.
You're on your own, pal.
Yep.
Apparently there are no pants in the hole I'm digging. But anyway, I didn't get into Mad all that much. I did kind of see it every so often, and I would pick one up occasionally. And that didn't start until high school, so it was kind of later on. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to Sergio's work there. My exposure to him came along a bit later when I got introduced to Gru. But in going back and having seen some of his earlier stuff and some of the not so earlier stuff and just stuff that's not Gru, his stuff is kind of an interesting. It's like he's got just this. I've never met the guy. It really just from his work, you'd think. I mean, not everybody's like this. Admittedly, not everybody is just like their work. But from what I've seen and what I've read about him, he's just kind of got this mischievous streak to him. And I can easily see him just popping off some silly little thing that just probably makes people laugh, whether they laugh or smile or whatever. And so and the cool thing is the fact that he's done that consistently for so long. I mean, like I said, we're looking at 55 years in Mad alone. That's a long time. I mean, lie. I'm not poking fun at him for being old. It's just a long time. I mean, you don't see people holding down the same job for 55 years anymore. Even if it's something like this. But for him to consistently be that kind of amusing, funny, intentionally funny for that long is just, that's kind of mind-blowing to me. I mean, that's a hell of an achievement.
That is. I guess I was introduced to Mad Magazine, I guess about 6th grade. But I always grew up in the smaller towns, and comic book stores were, like, not even heard of, you know. It was always the bottom shelf of the magazine rack, or sometimes they had a little spindle. But Mad Magazine was one that was always there. So I always picked it up, and I was the one that I would irk all my friends because I wouldn't let them crease the back of my cover. I like to keep my stuff neat.
But they always had that fold-in thing. I mean, come on. Yeah. You're supposed to crease it.
Well, you can kind of bend it and see, but, you know. I didn't want it creased, you know. But I guess to clarify the hole I dug earlier, I guess in 6th grade and stuff, I loved reading comic books, but I never really, I guess, paid attention to who was drawing them or writing them other than what the cover looks like. You know, I knew it was Batman or Superman, but I guess it wasn't until I got older that I started to appreciate artists and writers and that they were different people, you know. And so I guess I'm familiar with his work, but didn't know it was his work. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess it was about 85 when I started reading that. But I had a friend that brought me, I want to say at least 30 comic book, or not comic books, or magazines from Mad Magazine. These are like 60s and 70s stuff, so I'm sure I have a lot of his stuff in that, but I haven't really dug through the older stuff. I just remember it from a childhood that I liked it, and it was always whatever was the pop culture of the month, you know. And Garbage Pail Kids. Those were the two things I spent my lunch money on.
Wow.
Yep. I had an amazing childhood.
You were the one buying those things.
I had my little Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper all covered in them.
Okay.
Dang, definitely a child of the 80s. But anyway.
Right. I guess I never really liked girly things, so Mom keeps buying you girly things. You find ways to cover them up.
Okay.
Let me ask you, can you imagine working at Mad Magazine at that time? The talent that was there?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Working with the gang of idiots? Yeah.
It'd probably be a fun environment.
You'd think.
Well, you had Dave Berg, and you had Mort Drucker.
Don Martin.
Yeah. Al Jaffe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the famous Al Jaffe fold-ins that Liz doesn't like.
The nerve of that guy to create those things. Jeez.
Yeah.
As far as that stuff goes, I would take a piece of paper and fold it to fit in between where the folds were supposed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine what it was. I'd go, oh, okay, got it.
Right.
Wow.
You were a collector even back then, weren't you? Jeez.
No, I folded mine, darn it.
See,
I
was saving my lunch money for that stuff. I wasn't just going to let them tear my covers and everything up, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. It's an OCD thing.
You said it, not me.
You binge one page, you have to bend them all.
OCD sounds like OMG to me.
I do get pretty OCD about my comic books, though.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. When people ask me, hey, can I borrow that from you? I just go buy them one and give it to them. You're not touching my copy.
Yeah, get it back to me when you can.
Right.
Don't rush.
And you gift it under spreading the love. No, I just don't want you touching my stuff.
And that's where there's an entire side market for bags and boards.
All right. Yep. See, and that's how I know I've read things. Once I bag and board it, it's filed, it's put away, I've read it, it's good. So.
Behind the several layers of security in the vault.
Yeah. Well, I have everything like labeled and broke down by DC, Image, Marvel, you know. Marvel is a little bitty box, but it's got one.
Yeah, getting to her comics is like going through the hallways that Maxwell Smart did.
See, I was given a whole shed for my comic book stuff, so
wow.
Can't open that door, but it is in there.
Safe and sound.
Yep.
Is
Liz One Shed Newman.
Is it climate controlled at least? I mean, geez.
Kind of. It's sealed and has electricity.
Oh, wow.
He gave me lights.
That's why there are shocked animals lying around.
Right. But yeah.
But getting back. Yes, he did some books of collected cartoons, and I was lucky enough to meet him at one of the conventions, the old Dallas convention, Dallas Fantasy Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And he was at his table. There was nobody at his table, which struck me as extremely odd. So I went up and bought a couple of books from him. And he said, "Do you want me to sign this?" I said, "Yes, please." So we took the wrap off. And he said, "Do you mind if I sketch?" I said, "No, not at all." He did a couple of sketches, which at that time was kind of unheard of at conventions. And then he pulled out the color pens and started highlighting his sketches.
Wow.
That's what I felt.
Dang.
I was in awe of what he had done just for a collected book of his little comic strips. And this was, I think this was even before it grew that he had done these. And one was an astronaut book, and the other was some firefighters that he had done cartoons about. But then he moved to Gru, which was it? Which one was it? Was it Epic or no? It wasn't Epic. Who first did that? Thomas?
Pacific, I think.
Pacific. Okay, yeah. And Pacific was on a roll at that time too, because they had, the Timothy Truman book.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I'm trying to remember what that was.
they had, wow, this is a good idea to come prepared, folks.
Why the hell should we start now? I mean,
Right.
They had John Sable as one of their titles, and some really good books at that. But then he came out with Gru, which he's done with Evanier all these years. They had their own title. They ended up going over to Marvel, where he had his own title.
Yeah, that was the Epic line.
Yeah. But when he was under the Epic line, everybody was writing in saying, "I saw the hidden message," because somewhere on one of the panels, he would hide a message of some sort. And it was a game. And I played it too, looking for it. Found them, but I didn't write in about it and say, "Look what I found."
Well, not only did he do that, but he would also draw the creative team. There, you would see him, you'd see Mark Evanier, you'd see Tom Luth, and you'd see Stan Sakai.
Yes.
They would be in there. They would also be in there. It may be just a scene where there's a big crowd and they're in the middle of it. I remember one time their heads were actually the headstock of the jester's or the minstrel's instrument.
Oh, cool.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, I mean he that was fun too. When I realized that was going on, I had to go back and look at the previous books and try to see if I could find them. I don't know if it was every issue or if it was every issue, I didn't catch them all, but I would catch a lot of them. I was like, oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable to see if you could locate that stuff.
It's like Where's Waldo from before. That was cool.
That's right.
Also fun to see what kind of weird and interesting spots, places they would put them.
And there was always some little jokes back there too, especially if there's like a big crowd scene or something like that. If you pay attention, you might see something elsewhere. It kind of reminds me of the Abrams Zucker films, Airplane and all that. That there's usually you're paying attention to what's going on right in front of you, but if you look behind what's going on there, you'll see something else that's just as funny, if not funnier.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. But all worthwhile. It's all worthwhile.
Were you gonna say something, Liz?
No. I was done.
You're not Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Right. I thought we were back in the 60s, you know.
It's coming early tonight, folks.
No, not knowing very much about him, I have to say that I've read through the Wikipedia. Unless I think you just told me more about him than Wikipedia did. So, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
I always told you were a walking Wikipedia.
Jack of all trades and ace of none.
Right?
I'm not sure that walking Wikipedia thing is a compliment, though.
For me, it is.
How about a hobbling?
Hobbling.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Definitely more interesting.
Yeah, you're the best free encyclopedia money can buy, Les.
Yes.
Easier to run over than the real Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that they had that he was part of the TV's bloopers and practical jokes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He did all of the Segway art. They would have
The Segway animations. Yeah, was his stuff.
Little guys running across the bottom of the screen. Yeah.
And sometimes those were funnier than what was actually being shown.
Oh, usually.
Very true.
Now,
Well,
I don't know, but did he do any work on Mad TV? The little where they did the comic strips, not the new thing that they have now, where it's all skits, but they used to break it up, and there was like Spy versus Spy, and one other one, but
Well, Spy vs. Spy was Prohias.
is it okay?
He was the one that did Spy vs. Spy. He was the creator of.
He was also the guy who got Aragones into Mad Magazine.
Yep.
Huh.
According to this, he was on the 70s revival of Laughing, which I didn't remember they actually did a revival. I can't see that doing real well.
I I think they've tried to revive Laugh-In a couple of times, and it has never worked.
No.
Which is kind of a shame.
Kinda.
But that was topical humor.
Yeah. I mean, even the 60s stuff, it doesn't hold up as well. Because it was topical.
Yeah. It's not as fun watching it. I mean, there are some bits that are fun.
Yeah.
And funny now if you watch it, but not much. It's pretty. It's dated
material.
It's very 60s. Yeah, it's very almost painfully 60s.
As were the 60s.
Pretty much, yeah. Every decade has its pain. Most of them involve fashion, but anyway.
They all have a chance at My Mother the Car.
They do, but they don't take it very often.
Gladly, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just laying out because that's kind of bad karma considering Jerry Van Dyke just passed away.
True.
There's that.
Yeah.
Hey, it was successful.
Most people know him though from Coach.
True.
That's because there are more. Never mind. I'm not gonna take an old joke shot there. That's not nice. But Coach is a newer show. We'll just put it that way.
There you go. Okay.
And honestly, was a very successful sitcom.
Yeah. Yes, it was. And he was a part of the reason.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure My Mother the Car was very, very good in its time, but it didn't last. I mean, how long did that last? How long did it run?
I think one season. Maybe two.
What? Never mind.
But it gave us Avery Schreiber.
Well, thank goodness for that.
That sounded so half-hearted.
I don't have a clue who Avery Schreiber is.
Now, is word out that they're going to do a new series for Gru?
I have not heard an announcement yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something maybe this summer or fall. I mean, there's usually one ever so often.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the end of the last one, which would have been a few months ago, honestly, not that long ago, made it. I mean, it seemed like there was more coming. I mean, it didn't seem like an end.
True.
So, I mean, not that I don't know that there will be, but it seemed pretty open-ended. Gru is pretty flexible in terms of what kind of story you can do with them. You can pretty much stick them in there and point them in the direction of some cheese dip, and you got a story pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
He was at a convention in downtown Dallas one year, and this was not at the Fantasy Fair. This was at one of the big hotels down there. And he was standing out front taking suggestions for Gru cartoons. And somebody yelled, Star Trek. He drew the Enterprise from the exterior with one of the large ion engines being ripped away from the stabilizer, and he put a thought balloon down to the deck, and it said, "Did I err?" Everybody there lost it. And I would have given so much money just to have that sheet of paper, because he tore it off the pad and went on to the next one. But that was so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't do well in ships.
No. And Sergio himself is said to be the fastest cartoonist in the world. So the idea of him standing up there just drawing stuff and then rip it off, draw something else. I can see it.
Yep.
And he is fast. No two ways about that.
Have y'all checked out some of his other stuff? Like the Fanboy miniseries or anything like that? I know Les has.
Yes. Marvel, where he destroys the DC universe, or one of those.
Yeah, something like that.
No, I actually didn't even know about those until just recently, and I would love to find those. That would be awesome. Because he did one for Marvel and one for DC.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yes.
and also one for Star Wars. And I'd love to track those down.
Yeah. Research time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, what is it about Gru that makes him so fun to read?
It's a kind of a deep question for a very, very shallow character.
There you go. Deep thoughts.
What that triggers in my head is his complete and total comfort with any situation that he's in, no matter how lost he gets in the situation. I mean, there's just a lovable cluelessness about him, and just, of course, the unbelievable destruction that he causes, intentionally and unintentionally. It's almost, I don't know. I may wander off into the weeds here. He's almost like the total antithesis or a horrendous parody of any soap opera you've ever seen. Because, I mean, it's just, there's so much, and you watch a soap opera, and I mean, I don't necessarily recommend it, but sometimes you do these things not knowing what you're getting into. But there's just this, everything goes wrong all the time. And because that's that whole melodrama thing. You take drama and put it under the microscope, and that's kind of how you get melodrama. And it's just over the top enough to be somewhat entertaining, and they also stick things in there. They stick some recurring themes in, and they stick some recurring characters in a soap opera, and they bring that stuff. They cycle that stuff back through every so often just to keep people interested. And honestly, Gru kind of works the same way. There's like a cast of characters, and actually a couple of years ago they did I'm drawing a blank on what the title of the series was, but they did like a 12-issue series, which kind of each issue focused on a different kind of member of that cast of characters, and it was the whole thing was awesome. Of course, it's Gru and it's Sergio and it's the gang, and it's a blast, but it kind of, in a way, emphasized how that recurring thing happens and how they bring back, oh, well, we haven't seen this guy in a while. Let's bring him in and do something. Gru can break his toys or whatever. Gru can eat his cheese dip, or Gru can honestly just be over there and be a force of chaos, which is what he pretty much is. And so it's all, I mean, in that sense, it's almost just kind of a total parody of drama. I mean, to the limit, like cranked up to 11. And it just from a story perspective, it's just a lot of crazy fun. And this is coming from a guy who honestly got into Gru because he was kind of a fantasy character, and I was heavily into fantasy at the time. Not that I've ever really gotten out of it, but you know. That was kind of my in. That was my. This is a reason to read this because somebody handed it to me. Not that we're going to name any names.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you have no idea. It was a long time ago.
Mm.
But yeah, so that was like a reason to kind of latch onto it, and then of course it just takes over. The Gru phenomenon just sort of moves in and shoves everything else out of the way, and is just awesome by itself.
To me, it's one of the best parodies of Conan ever. And at that time, Conan was riding the big wave for Marvel. They had Conan Comics, they had the Conan magazine. And I remember readers telling me how great Conan was. Yeah, I've been reading the books for quite some time, so you're not really telling me anything. You're looking at adaptations or new storylines, and that's all well and good. But when Gru came along as the Ralph Cramden of sword and sorcery type books, I was so happy to see something new and different. And it struck a chord with me, and I stuck with it. Now, trying to find the books at this time is really difficult, because if they reprint them, they wait a long time before they decide to bring them back to the shelf. And that's why a lot of people don't know of the character or the books. And to me, that's a shame that they don't know. I understand the marketing part, but it's a shame that that people don't know of Gru. That's, to me, is one of the things that everybody should be part of.
Well, yeah, Gru was kind of creator-owned before it was cool to be creator-owned.
Yep.
And so the print runs weren't huge. Even when you're backed by Marvel at that time, the print runs still aren't huge, because it's kind of a side thing for them. It's not one of their big books. They're not going to print a ton of them. So they can be hard to track down now, because there just weren't that many printed at the time. Which is a pain, because I would love to get some of those, but man, you almost have to be a collector to find them.
eBay.
I'm more concerned with the prices, but yeah. It's not that you can't find them, it's that I don't want to pay that for a single book, even though it's Gru and I would love to have it.
Yeah.
I'm not a collector. I don't fault people who are, of course.
Yeah.
But not my thing.
Well, doing research just now, I was able to find the Marvel and the DC book for $15. So I think I'll pick those up.
Good choice.
Yep, not bad.
Sounds good to me.
I bet it won't be so easy to track down the Star Wars one.
Probably not. Well,
Probably
not at that price.
Yeah, I've been looking through here. There's some Gru on here, but I haven't seen any of the Star Wars.
Did Dark Horse ever do a collection of that Gru and Conan
Yes.
book, or did
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
That may be one for me to track then.
I can see what I can do.
I'd appreciate that.
It's pretty entertaining, I have to say.
Yes, because they had the two artists going at that, did they?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing that was cool. Part of the thing that was cool about that was the fact that they maintained the same art styles. So you never, if I remember correctly, you never saw Gru other than the way Sergio presents him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Conan is pretty much the traditional looking Conan. He wasn't Sergio-ized or anything, if I'm remembering it correctly, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it kind of a cool and interesting collaboration there, including more than one battle scene.
Yeah. Alrighty. Any final thoughts before we take a quick break and come back with picks? Just happy anniversary, Sergio, and thank you for the laughs and the smiles. It's been great.
Thank you for sharing your talent with all of us.
Yep.
For sure.
Any final thoughts from you, Les?
I just iterate what you guys said, because it is such a talent, something that I've always wished I could have, but obviously that ain't going to happen.
Yeah, you never know. You never know until you try.
No, I've already given up on that trying business.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back, and it's time for weekly picks, and I lead off this week. And for my first choice, I'm going with Boom Studios. It's a new book called Abbott. And it's written by Saladin Ahmed, who is the current writer of Black Bolt, and with art by Sami Cavella, who we're familiar with his the work from Beautiful Canvas, from Black Mass, if I'm not mistaken, Black Mass Studios. But it's a story of a woman who's trying to find out. She's investigating a series of crimes that the police are not investigating, and there may be some occult ties to them. So it's kind of an interesting premise. It sounds like it's going to be kind of a noir crime thing with a little supernatural overtone. So, and the art looks good from what I've seen. So definitely want to check that one out.
Yep, looks like a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at that too. It looks pretty cool.
Alrighty, Les, you're up.
For my first choice, I look at Vinegar Teeth #1, Dark Horse Comics, written by Damon Gentry and illustrated by Troy Nixie. This one intrigued me because anybody that's listened to, I like cop stories, but this one's a little bit different. The main character is Artie Buckle. They say he's a grade A schmuck, but he is a good cop. Brick City, where he serves, is under siege from the citizenry, and the only partnership that Buckle can make is with a mysterious, tentacled, extra-dimensional being. So it's going to have humor, it's going to have horror, science fiction, and of course crime. So I'm kind of on board for this one.
Sounds good to me.
It does.
Yeah, I took a look at that one, and that's kind of intriguing too, definitely.
Yep.
Alrighty, Liz.
All right. Well, my first pick is Monstrous number 13. They're coming back with a new arc, so it should be pretty good. It's pretty easy to catch up because she's not too far into it, but it looks like this one will start off with we've watched her learn how to fight, and we've watched the second arc, we watched her learn a lot about her past, so it looks like in this one she finally meets up with it, and she's going to have to put all that to use. So, should be a pretty good one. Like I said, they're usually 6 long, so should move pretty quick.
Yeah, it seems like there was a long period between story arcs, but I know there's going to be a lot of people that are excited that this is back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, very cool stuff.
Like I said, it's Pretty easy to catch up because both of the other arcs are on trade.
Yep.
And Image always does the first one for $10, so
Yep.
wouldn't be very expensive to catch up either.
Nope, wouldn't be.
And it's well worth going after.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
I said for me, the beginning kind of started off slow, and I didn't know if I would really like it, but by the second arc, it really picks up, and you find out why all of that beginning stuff was so important. So she's laid a very good story. So if this is the ending, I'm really excited to see how she ends it.
And it's such a pretty book.
It is. The artwork is amazing.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Okie dokie. I have an Image book this time around, and kind of promised I wouldn't let this go until the end. Postal number 25 comes out this week, and this is the end of the story. This is the end of the series. I don't think it's the end of the story. I think there's more coming at some point, but I don't know anything for sure. And so this is kind of almost a one-shot after the last arc, in which some things will be sorted out for how things are going to happen in the future of Eden. So I am definitely ready to see how they're going to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see this one go, but yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it's over, but I don't think it's over. I think you're right about that. Okay. For my second choice, I kind of go in a different direction. This is from DC Comics. It is Scooby-Doo Team Up number 34. I've been picking these up off and on for the last few months because they've included guest stars. It kind of reminds me of the old Scooby movies where there was always a guest star who shows up and then they have to work together to solve the mystery and all that. And that's still kind of the same premise with this book. And this is written by Shelley Fish with art by Dario Bruzella. And in this issue, they team up with the Birds of Prey. And they even mentioned that Daphne and Velma actually become birds. They become part of the team. So, I mean, these have been little fun books, and they've made some interesting choices for teaming up. Last month they had the Legion of Superheroes. In March, they're actually teaming up with Angel and the Ape. If you're not familiar with them, that's an old 60s book, which I noticed when I'm sure that got Les's attention when that was solicited.
Well, sure, it's got a monkey in it.
Well, that too, but
That too.
wow. But, there was one a few months earlier where they had the Classic Challengers Unknown, and I know Les and I picked that up.
Yes.
So they've gone Silver Age with some of the team ups, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
That's cool.
We did that one, and they've done the one with the Super Pets long ago. It's interesting how they can find different groups to go after. But to me, still the best team up they had in cartoons was with Johnny Bravo.
Yeah. That one was pretty good.
Yeah.
See, when I think of team-ups, I always go to the Globetrotters. I guess because it was the most popular one, or the one they showed all the time. Or...
Yeah, there was at least two they did with the Globetrotters, if I'm not mistaken. At least two. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like them on Futurama, too.
I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, it's a good one.
I know that Scooby's supposed to be crossing over with Supernatural soon. I'm excited about that.
That's an interesting fit.
Mm-hmm. And actually, they're going to go animated with it, from what I've heard. But I keep watching it. It's like, man, when is this going to possibly, but they've played it up because a couple of times it's been on TV or he said something or, So it's coming. We just don't know when.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. Ruh-roh.
That'll be worth waiting for right there.
It will. I just hope it's not like the season finale after they've built it up for so long.
Oh, they can do that.
Yeah, they're good at that.
Alrighty, Les.
My number 2 choice is from IDW. Fred Van Lent brings back the comic book history. This is number 2 of the comic book history of comics. Comics for all. If you have been able to find some of the comic book history, that it's a fun read. It's a factual read. And it's such good timing in at some times. This one is going to include the British comics invasion. And they've got a build as Kirby Strikes Back. This kind of takes place talks about the creator's rights. And of course, Kirby was right in the middle of that. The British invasion talks about Gaiman, Morrison, Gibbons, Moore. So it's always a good read, and they usually have 2 different covers. The cover I prefer is the story cover, where it starts the story right there on the cover. You open it up and you continue. So if you get a chance, find the comic book history books that have been out and definitely go track this one down.
Hear, hear.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, Liz.
Well, for my second pick, I'm going with a new miniseries that DC's doing for Raven, Daughter of Darkness. Looks like this one will have her mom and her aunt in it, but I'm excited that Marv Wolfman is writing this one. He's, of course, done a lot of work on Teen Titans and the one shot of Raven I've read, so should be pretty good. They said it's 12 issues, so I don't know if they'll pick it up to keep it ongoing or if this is just going to lead us into more of the Teen Titans stuff. So it should be pretty good.
Cool.
And of course, Marv Wolfman, the creator of Raven and
Teen Titans.
Yep, the new Teen Titans with George Perez. So yep. Coming back to writing his creation. Of course, he did the miniseries that came out last year too. So it's cool. There's some excitement about this, especially with the Titans show coming later on this year. So
yep.
Neat.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Alrighty, my second pick is another Image book because it's me. But this one is exciting.
You noticed I hadn't said anything.
I've noticed none of you have said anything, and it's kind of weird. I'm a little creeped out by your silence. But yeah, I'm excited because Regression is coming back. Number 6 comes out this week, and Cullen Bunn and Danny Luckert and Marie Anger are back, and the story left off the first arc with Adrian taking off. He's like, all right, I'm out of here, basically on the run, and so there are some cops trying to track him down, and they're where he's gone, where he has ended up, where Adrian has ended up is maybe not a good place, so we'll have to see where things go from here. But this is a book that it delights in taking strange and weird left turns, so looking forward to seeing where it goes. Some more left turns, please.
Yeah, this has been an interesting one, definitely. Alrighty, and I have our honorable mention this week. It is from IDW, and it is the collection of the Time and Bind miniseries that was written and illustrated by Tom Zayer, which I know we've mentioned on the show before. He was the creator of Love and Capes, which is also another awesome series. But this is a story of a woman named Megan who's having to deal with her mother, who has just been put in a home because she's suffering from Alzheimer's, and she was looking for a way to get away. And she goes out with her girlfriends, the fellow teachers, to go have a drink, although she was the designated driver. And she meets the owner, and let's just say alcohol's involved, time travel's involved, and it's a hell of a story. It's a really great read.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a very touching read.
It is. I remember reading the last issue, and I actually was tearing up. I actually teared up in reading the last issue.
Oh, I did too.
And I had to tweet something to Tom. I told him about that, and of course he thanked me for saying that. But yeah, it's a great little story, and that's the thing about Tom. He does some great stories with great character relationships and all that. I highly recommend this and the Love and Capes and Long Distance, I believe, was the miniseries in between those books. And I'm ready for whatever he has next. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
That was a good series.
Alrighty. Any special mentions this week? Any special shout-outs?
Not for me.
No.
I'm pretty mum.
You're what?
Pretty mum. Don't
Okay.
make fun of it. Don't make fun of it, pal.
Okay. Anyway. We'll get to our regular shout-outs then. First off, want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying our podcast with the awesome music. You should really check them out. We'll have a link to their page on our show notes, and then you can also go to our website and click on the podcast tab, and you'll see information about them as well. Also want to thank the fine folks that make up the Podern family on Twitter, the group of fellow podcasters, for spreading the word of the fellowship, retweeting our links and all that. We do appreciate their support. Guys, you should really go check out. All you got to do, you don't have to necessarily have an account. Just go to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Podern Family as one word. And whatever you're looking for, whatever floats your boat, I'm sure there's a podcast for it. Click on that link, download it, check it out, and hopefully you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support in the past. We value your feedback. You have a comment, suggestion, complaint, question, whatever. We're always willing to listen to what y'all have to say, and there are several ways you can contact us. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. That's one way. Just shoot us an email. You can go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our About Us tab, and there's a contact form on the side that you can fill out. You can contact us through social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. That's all one word. And obviously we are on Twitter, @Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there. Most of us have our own personal Twitter account, which you can follow us if you'd like. Mike is @MikeyGeek. Liz is @Newman_L, and that's NEUMANN_L. And I'm @TomTCGeek. Feel free to follow us. And just, if you'd like, just tweet at us, say, hey, heard y'all from the podcast and I'm following, or whatever. And wherever you download or listen to our podcast, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and hopefully sometime soon, Spotify. We're in the process, but not yet. We're working on it. Feel free to rate us, and whatever system that is, whether it's thumbs up, thumbs down, star, numbers, whatever. And if you have a couple extra moments, a review would be awesome as well. It'd be much appreciated. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it.
Yep.
All right. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
And we will see you next time.
Thank you once again for listening. We appreciate your support as always. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,